Right, you're watching. This is a point here on AM Live. I've kept my guests for so long. I want to introduce them to you right now. And of course, looking at what is on the front page of the Daily Nation, this really acts as a segue to a discussion today. Are we still waiting for the other shoe to drop? Hardly we've known who are the culprits of the NYS scandal. They've not been brought to book, but there seemed to be another scandal in the making as well. And this is what has been, of course, on the front pages of the Daily Nation. Since, or I should say, Sunday Nation yesterday and today's Daily Nation, how 90 or 9 billion shillings just walked out of NYS. NYS Director General Dubai P.S. Omolo quizzed by CID of a loss of billions. Some of the companies being investigated and must. Youth CS Kobia says anyone found culpable will face the law. This story, or the stories, are well tucked away for you on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation today. Just last week, we saw the president during the meeting with the KEPSA, or the private Kenya Private Sector Alliance in State House, was really mad on the issue of corruption. And he said no one will be spared as far as corruption is concerned. But this seemed to be also blotting Uhuru's copybook as far as fighting corruption is concerned. Allow me to introduce our panelists who are here this morning with us. We have Kabano Kabando, who is a former legislator of Mukoroini. Also, we do have with us as well Dr. James Nyikal, who is a member of parliament from Seme. We have with us as well Samuel Pogisho, who is a senator from West Pokot, and Governor Nyong'o, who is the governor of Kisumu City. Also, we're eagerly waiting for Farah Malim to join us. Kisumu County. Kisumu County. Thank you. Kisumu County. We're eagerly waiting for Farah Malim to join us as well this morning here on AM Live. But let's just begin with what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. The NYS scandal.
Just walked.
It seems it just walked. Just walked away from that particular department. 9 billion shillings. And of course, there has been a row from the 10 billion shillings that was on as a splash of the Sunday Nation yesterday. Today we have the 9 billion shillings. What is your take, Kabando Kabando?
I think this brings to the fore the importance of reviewing the capacities of the constitutional agency that we created many years ago, and that we formed in 2010 constitution, because it has now become the routine that important disclosures on such scandals are disclosed, are done by newspapers, by the media. This should be a question of the EACC. This should be concerning more the office of the DCI, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. So, more than the money that is said to have been stolen, is the question of, are we in good stand as far as constitutional agencies are concerned, in the context of their mandate, their work. The fact that EACC has not nailed a single individual. You know, last week I saw some recovery of some plots. I think what about 2.53 million in Karatina, that's Madeira, in my home county of Nyeri.
Yes.
That were grabbed by some private developers in that rural township. They were reverted back to the National Police Service.
Yes.
I saw Archbishop Wabukala, the chairman of EACC. I saw directors of EACC, the commissioners. I saw the Inspector General of Police, the area governor of the Nyeri County, and the area member of parliament. They were all assembled in that place to witness the return of those plots meant for housing of policemen within Madeira constituency.
Yes.
When are we going to witness these big thieves, these overnight billionaires being escorted to committee and being served the menu that has been given to people who committed no crime because they just gave their opinions and they were detained, they were taken to committee. People who were caught, we saw a policeman being jailed. It has been a big story at Roysambu, despite the public outcry that indeed he was there dining because he was facing the criminals around Kasarani. So there's a question that should be asking. But when you ask these questions, because I remember 3 years ago we had a debate about the SEC when the commissioners, the Matemo team was being removed. You remember I talked about it last week. Then there was a debate again renewed. I think it was in 2015, 2016.
Yes.
And I saw members of parliament rising to say that we're asking for a restructuring of the EACC because we come from majority communities, we are targeting the minority communities. And the top leadership of the National Assembly and the prominent members, veteran members of the National Assembly, rose, and it was in the news in the evening, you know, the mainstream television stations. People suffocating or downgrading the debate about the capacity of EACC to our community is being fought. This director is, when you know, you are a commissioner at EACC, and people say you belong to our community. So, and when you are charged as a member of parliament, as a governor, as a CS, you see yourself mobilizing a lot of people. You come here, you go to downtown Nairobi, you give people 200 shillings, they escort you to Integrity House. So the question is, are we in a good stand? My take is no.
No. All right. Are we on a good state? That is a question that is being asked by Kabando Kabando. What do you think, Dr. Nyikal?
We are in a bad state. That's the question. And if you look at this issue of corruption, it's actually such a big problem that, first of all, you have to look at the national ethos as a country.
Yes.
What is our real deep feeling about corruption, despite what we say in public? How do we treat people who are suspected or even people who have been accused of corruption? Are they darlings of the community? Can it be that if you have been involved in a scandal, even if you have not been proved, but there's a lot of evidence that you may have been involved, would you go for a public seat and get elected? If that happens, then we must say that the country as a whole is actually condoning corruption. Now, the next thing we'll talk about are the structures we put in, starting all the way from the Constitution. You look at EACC, that is there. You look at the Director of Criminal Investigation. You look at prosecution. How active are they? Are we seeing that they are actually doing their work? Are we seeing people taken to court? Are we seeing people being seriously investigated? Sometimes we see it's being done, but what are the outcomes? Then you come to the institutions themselves. You look at this, somebody saying, just walked out of NYS. That cannot come from the leadership of an institution, because the institutions are structures that should constantly let the people in charge know what is happening. When I read about this, I think yesterday, there were issues like there are things that were being done to be done quickly, and therefore normal procurement procedures were not followed. And some were saying that those will be followed later. You can never do that when you have an institution. If there are emergency situations, there are even laid down structures for dealing with the emergency situation. Again, the fact that it is coming from the newspaper and people are surprised up to the people in charge is also not good, because all these government institutions have internal structures. You have internal audits that look at systems, that look at, before used to look at every transaction, but now we'll sample transactions, we look at systems. So it should never really appear in the newspapers before the people in charge are alerted, at least by their audit section, that something is going on. And the officers that are there, the mid-level, the junior officers, it's not possible that anything can happen to that. Right. So as a country, from top people, structures, we all seem to be condoning corruption. And I think that's why I answer his question and say we're in a bad state. We must look at it nationally, put in very severe sanctions. I've once said, and people thought I was probably mad, that we may even have to look at the issue of death penalty and recovery of assets. Because people who steal so much, they kill people indirectly. We'll miss, yeah.
So, it is true. Right. Thank you. Back to a top story. We're following the new NYS scam. And of course, this morning, I promised you we'll circle back with Professor Nyong'o and Samuel Pogiso to give us also their view about this new development. Let's hear from Samuel Pogiso on this, because it seems also, just I think last month, we had from the courts that they've acquitted the former permanent principal secretary in the Ministry of Devolution then, Youth and Gender, that is Devolution in Youth and Gender, that was Peter Manguti, because they said there was no substantive, evidence from the prosecutor. So how assured are we that this time forth, if they undergo investigation, then people will be brought to book?
Debarl, thank you and good morning. The whole situation needs really for us as Kenyans to come back to the question of the Kenya we want. Comes back to the question of we have seen the monies walk out of all these ministries. We see them, and it translates into lifestyles of people. And you can watch the people transform from fairly low citizens with unknown assets to people becoming billionaires within 4 years, 5 years. We see all these things walking out. This is not the only one walking out of our offices. So what's the question? Where are we going to find the people who will stop this walking out? We seem to celebrate the people who have a lot of money in their hands. We celebrate them. So is it a cultural thing? Should we really seriously think we have a system that can stop this? Should we seriously? If His Excellency the President gets even frustrated, he wants this thing to stop, but he can't stop. Now, shouldn't we really have a session as Kenyans one more time and say, what kind of Kenya do we want? What kind of leadership should be in this country? And in any case, and I'm saying basically, if we know somebody has been in one place where money walks out, why retain them there? I mean, 3 years, 4 years, the same person, you can see the money walking out. And you can see the person transforming themselves with that money. It's not easy to talk about these things, but we must, as Kenyans, begin to seriously know that in the coming century, in the coming years, the next decade, unless we can look our children in the eye and say, you have a bright future, they are doomed, because we keep walking out with public money, and we just get celebrated for that. So I'd like to see a situation where we in the legislature seriously debate these things. And I don't think I like the way legislators sometimes get used or accept, just to be the ones speaking against punishment of people who have stolen money. I think legislators should rise above that, and we should really deal with the matter of theft seriously. So a lot of money is going to walk out. This is 9 billion. This is what probably is in the hands of a few individuals right now, and I think that whatever has caused NYS to be open, to be porous, at least it's one person. There must be somebody in charge who can just seal those loopholes. It may require the removal of people. It may require, punishing a few people for others to see. And so I want to support my friends who say that we are not taking corruption seriously. And I think we need to know who then speaks, who speaks then to help the president seal these loopholes. And I think we should all be brought together. There must be a forum for us to discuss this matter again.
All right. Let's hear from Professor Nyong'o, head Sh10, because some of the excuses that we have here is that some of the civil servants that were still in NYS during, when some of the leaders were being arraigned in court, like the principal secretary, Peter Manguti, they're still there. And the people who are not even deterred in the face of ongoing investigations, still this was ongoing while the other NYS scandal was still on, or being investigated in the courts. Your take?
I think, Debarl, thank you very much. I think the statement you make is at the core of it, that some of the civil servants who are there when the former peers are still there. These are the people responsible for this kind of scam. Let me tell you something. If you read this paper, and Dr. Nikal pointed this out when he was talking, he talked about internal audit and systems and so on, and we must look at that. Look, if you read this story, I want to read the paragraph, because this paragraph
That's
really
on page,
captures
page
4.
Page 4.
If you look at page 4, on that paragraph which begins, whereas the contract numbers were valid and pre-qualified companies genuine, the dummy companies were basically shells created to facilitate fraud. Using a valid contract number, an account could be opened for the shell companies in the integrated financial management information system. Local purchase orders were then raised in respect to the dummy companies, and the impression created that they had supplied goods to NYS. The fake payments were slotted into NYS stock or pending bills. Now, almost every government, including counter government, face this. In other words, you are creating an IFMIS system, thinking that if you feed information into IFMIS, you have done a very good job, and that you are now ready to deal with genuine companies supplying goods and services to government, not realizing that that data you are feeding into IFMIS is fake data. And then IFMIS is going to validate this fake data. And then there are people down the line who will say they have received the goods, and give receipts to the people who have supplied the goods, and documents exist in government files showing that the whole system has worked, but you have been duped. The people to help you find out whether you have been duped are two sections in government, the internal audit and the procurement department. If people in the internal audit are the ones involved in this fake process, and if people in procurement are people who then procure because the fake process has been approved by IFMIS, you are cooked. And this is not happening just in NYS. It's happening all over the place. So 2 things must happen. You must not wait 6 or 8 months later or a year later for the Auditor General to come and audit the system and tell you what went wrong. The thing must begin by having proper internal audit system and procurement system. This is where the Treasury comes in. Before the Auditor General comes, the Treasury, the people who give us money to spend in government, must make sure that in every government department there's a proper internal audit system and procurement system. I'll give you an example. When I was Minister of Medical Services, this is a true story. The day we were in the, he was
Principal Secretary.
He was PS in
PS.
Public Health, and I was
Public
Minister
Health,
in
yeah.
Medical Services. We were in the same building, half a house. The day I first went to my office, I found all kinds of people in the corridors, Kalasingas, whatnot. So I went in my office and I called my permanent secretary, Hezron Magitu. Hezron, who are these people? They don't look like civil servants. He told me they were service providers. So I told him, who are service providers? Because I had been in planning and never came across people called service providers. And then he told me these people supply medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, and so on. So I asked him, is there an institution in this ministry called KEMSA which deals with these things? He said, yes, there is, but no, Mr. Minister, some of it is done here. The first indication to me that system was not working. We should not be involved in the business of procurement, goods and services in the ministry. Should be done by KEMSA. We should be making policies and running the system. So I started the battle, taking everything back to KEMSA, hoping that the system there would be working and making sure there was a new board properly recruited with corporate governance to run things there. So what I'm saying is the following. The thing we have before us, a system which is not working. Secondly, one thing must be reversed. In 1972, the Nyong'o Commission gave civil servants the opportunity to do business. That is when the road started setting up in the Kenyan government. That must be revised. The keyword to it is the following. We should follow Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. Get the best and the brightest in government and pay them well. Get the best and the brightest in government and pay them well. You know, if you go to these procurement systems, and audit systems, you'll find all kinds of people with all kinds of degrees from all kinds of universities in this country. They have been sweepers, they have been messengers, they have been what? They go to these universities now from 5 o'clock to 7, within a matter of 2 years, their degrees in procurement, they come completely fake individuals. And they populate government. So unless we do this cleaning system and make sure that people have degrees which they deserve and they actually qualified, we're not going anywhere. And finally, and this is in education, somebody is teaching mathematics, okay? You go to some St. John's Bible School against a BA in theology, comes back and says, now I've got a BA in theology, I need to be promoted. Theology has very little to do with mathematics.
Yeah.
Why promoted? Because at a degree, this idea of people fetching degrees from all over the place and getting promotion in government, let us ask, is that degree relevant to what you are doing in government? Thank you.
Good question.
Let me just support something about what the professor said. There are all these systems. There's procurement, there is internal audit, there's the finance audit, the FMIS, and so on. Now, what runs across it, you have massive collusion, so that the top person may not know, and you will find, for example, permanent secretaries may not even be signing checks. So if all these people collude up to the bottom, then there'll be papers saying services were provided, goods were delivered, but actually there was nothing.
Yes.
So the big thing we're having is collusion. Now, it is even apparent outside in the communities. Just look at procurement officers. Just look at finance officers. Just look at as accountant. Just go and see how they live outside in the countryside, and you will see. We used to joke when I was in the when I was in the government, that if you look at the houses of procurement officers and houses of permanent secretaries, the rural homes, the procurement officers, very junior ones, have massive houses, lifestyle, as Honorable Pugiso said. So there's collusion, which I will almost call national collusion in this matter. So, and there is no, if the collusion then extends even to the institutions like ESCC, like DPP, like DCI, why do we think these collusions may not extend there? So you need something more profound in the country. I support what he said about systems.
I wanted to make a very curious observation that when the previous case was being sort of finished or concluded at the judiciary, we are doing the handshake at the Harabi House.
Yes.
Sometimes you read mischief, some conspiracy that may be very embedded, very inside the system. People who get an inkling of what is about to happen tomorrow within the system, and they orchestrate. Because I found that to be very funny coincidence, that when His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable Odinga were coming with the 9-point agenda, which include the fight against corruption at the Harabi House, the same day, our judiciary, which is actually on the dock, was acquitting all the charged for the previous. So 9th of March marked 2 highlights. The handshake, which dominated the news, and in the midst of the excitement in the country, that we are going to have calm and stability and friendship, because His Excellency the President and Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga are coming together, you sneak in. So on 9th of March, we had the main headline, the handshake, the building bridges for a new Kenya, the 9-point agenda. And in the back pages, then we had the acquittals. But there's a point of encouragement. And before I say that, let me say another observation which should give us a lot of hope and confidence. You know, according to the story in the Sunday Nation, carried forward in the Daily Nation today and other papers, it is the NYS, the National Intelligence Service, that is reported to have made a report to the President. And the new appointee at the office of the
NYS.
Director of Public Prosecution was a senior staff at the NYS.
Yes.
I think the National Intelligence Service may play a more important role, and I think it's already showing like it is going to do so, in making some of these disclosures so that they're in public domain, because the biggest obstacles to really punishing corruption in this country is the judiciary and the so-called investigation part, but now DPP is in good hands. And my message to President Uhuru, I know he means well, to Right Honorable Raila Odinga, I know he means well, and that's why some people are fearing the handshake, is that the biggest legacy that the handshake can give in this country. You know, you can talk about the Big Four. The Big Four may not happen if we have this pilferage, this corruption. We can talk about stabilizing Kenya. We will not stabilize Kenya if you have millions being churned out of colleges and universities every year. They cannot find jobs because a few people want to live the kind of lives that my good senior Dr. Nyikali is talking about here. The biggest legacy that the handshake will give this country is a crackdown on corruption, crackdown on impunity, and ensuring that really we have long-lasting solution that will celebrate meritocracy, honesty. Let us really work on Chapter 6 of this Constitution. It's about leadership and integrity. The fighting against corruption will give solutions to the 9-point agenda, because poverty brings makes people vulnerable to crime. Poverty also makes the country insecure.
Right. Let's say from Pogisho.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I agree with my colleagues, that this is the same story over and over again. We get frustrated. As an ordinary citizen, if you ask them, they can see all this leakage in the past, where the money is coming from. They see all these losses, and they can almost tell you, and Wananchi can almost tell you who is stealing this money. They can see it. The frustration is how they get this information to who, and who is going to use it to act in that interest. We see this. You see, we are Kenyans. We know each other. We know each other so well, and there are times when we just shut our eyes and as though we never saw, turn a blind eye, as if we never saw what was happening. But if we mean well for the next generation, to teach them to respect the resources in the country, to teach them to work hard, to teach them that you can climb the ladder to become anything, then we show them the shortcuts. We are really killing that dream of those guys, that those who take shortcuts are the ones who are surviving. And so we basically need to start thinking again about how we will deal with the leadership in this country. I see the frustration. Again, I see the frustration because the coalition we're talking about is everywhere, all the way to the judiciary, all the way to the investigation. And if that coalition continues that way, there's nothing you can do. I mean, if you do a shoddy investigation as part of a coalition, there's no reason why somebody cannot be acquitted. So all these things need to be put together. I think there must be a serious meeting of all these minds to say, are we headed in the right direction? If we continue the way we are doing now, don't expect a different answer.
What Machimea Pogisho is saying, Senator Pogisho is saying, is very important. We are too permissive as a society, really permissive. Things are done wrong and you kind of tolerate it as if it will go away. But one thing I want to add regarding what my brother Kabando was saying about the judiciary. You know, judges can be in a very difficult position. Somebody is brought before you that he stole 9 billion shillings from the government. And you as a judge, you know the story.
Yes.
But it depends on evidence brought before you by the plaintiff. You know, he must come before you and say, these are the facts that I'm putting to you against the defendant. If the plaintiff himself comes and puts such shoddy facts, you have no position to convict the fellow, because the person supposed to be putting facts before you is himself deliberately doing a shoddy job, so that and that leads to what Senator Pogisho is saying. You see, these fellows, by the time they see 9 billion shillings, they are already prepared on how the system is going to work. And they begin wiring the system, as they say,
Yeah.
to the extent that even if they go to court, they'll be acquitted anyway. So what do you do? It must be a complete purge. This is why I like what the NYS did. You know, NYS has two major functions: political intelligence, economic intelligence.
Yes.
Nowadays, Kabando, struggling for multi-party politics and so on, the so-called special branch, its main role was political. They forgot that there's something that the country needs. Now, the present National Intelligence Service, I'm glad that we got rid of some called the National Intelligence Service, should know that what will save this country more than anything else is economic intelligence. The other day I met the officials of NYS in my county, and I told them, look, you are only going to help me if you tell me what is sabotaging the economy of Kisumu County. Don't come and tell me which MCA is sleeping with who. That's none of my business. That's the affair. But how this economy is going is much more important than who is sleeping with who. Okay, that report you compile and put to some of these the gutter press. That doesn't help us. Okay. Okay.
Maybe we should actually question the issue of IFPs, because we see even the previous scam, this particular system was everyone was raising accusatory fingers, and we had also the CS of Treasury coming to, in defense of IFMIS. But we can see people are gaming the system, right from the procurement officers right to the store managers. Everyone is in the system. So it is not the problem of a system, it is the people who are actually gaming the system. So the question would be, how can they even be so defiant in the face? That is what is really worrying me. While the other investigation is still going on, we still have this particular incident happening, because this, we're given to understand, was happening over the 3 years that the NYS scam has been on. Until now, we have this particular revelation. So it seems our conscience, especially from the public service, is so seared that we don't really care. That so the culture, we had also Reverend Joya here last Friday saying it is not really a culture, because culture is a normal norms of a society, and corruption cannot be normal. So we should not really be calling it a culture. But yes, we have this particular system that is so ingrained in us that we don't have any conscience anymore when it comes to corruption. Have we crossed the Rubicon as a country? Because we'll have this particular case, they'll say still it's under investigation, then it will taper off. The media now will focus on another, their attention on another issue again, and then it will just taper off like that. Let's hear from Nyong'o.
I talked about two things. That the nation as a whole may be condoning corruption. If people who have been involved, people who have been accused, people who apparently to everybody may be guilty of actually siphoning money out, and as I said, with collusion throughout the system, they will go free. But people actually know what's happening. How does the country, the nation as a whole, handle them? I just said one simple statement. For example, if they go and face the electorate, how are they treated? If they go into Arambes, how are they treated? If they go into churches, how are they treated? I'll give you one example where a child of about 11, we were watching TV, and somebody had been accused, national figure had been accused in the newspapers of corruption, and this person was in church and was being received. The child asked, but they are saying that person is corrupt, but he's in church, and the church is happy with him. Now, we may ignore these things, but it's important. The other one is systems alone. Systems are designed by people, and with the age of technology, you must realize that the mid-level are much more advanced in technology. So when you put a system and people inherently are corrupt, then they feed corruption into the system, and that's what the system will bring out. And I said, if collusion starts, as Professor said, there will be collusion at every level. And remember when NYS was being investigated the other time, remember how the money was distributed, the people who actually received the money. You could see a whole barrage of people and companies and institutions. That is part of the collusion. It will even involve the people who should themselves have been the watchdogs. So that, and if you look at the, I mentioned, and I've mentioned this many times, have we gotten to a point where as a nation, when you are mentioned in corruption, you are scared, you are worried that however much money you have, you may not use it. One, you could lose your life. It has happened in other countries. I know very many people. I once went to Reverend Njoya's house and asked him, can't we as a person start thinking of capital punishment, that if you are actually found to be corrupt, you can actually be executed. It has happened in other countries, in the Asian tigers, that has happened before. So people are afraid. Your property can be traced to the very end. So that there is a national sanction, there is judicial sanction, and then you lose your property. Unless that is done and people know that you will not benefit from corruption, it will go on. So I think if you looked at, to come to the handshake, one of the issues what came was national ethos.
Yes.
And do we look at a country, do we have a nation or we have a state? If we have a state, then the people's tendency is to exploit a state because they don't have a sense of belonging. But if you have a nation where people feel for the nation, where people feel that this is our property, if money is lost, I'll miss health services. If money is lost, I will have bad roads. And people feel deeply about that. Then you get a national feeling, a national exhibition of hostility towards corruption. Me, I think we need a much broader thing. We need to look at the laws. We need to be very severe. To the extent that I know in some of these cases, people may suffer if the evidence is not available. But if a few people suffer, and maybe not correctly, but the bigger gain is for the whole nation. I think we should look at that.
All right. We have a system maybe that is failing Kenyans, I should say, when it comes to prosecution, because we saw also when it came to Pastor Nganga and the issue of Masinjeri, they were raising the issue of the prosecution, the evidence given to the court. That was a sloppy job. The same story with the NYS scandal as well. That Peter Mangiti and people who are mentioned, Anma Igoro, who's the governor right now, you know, there was no credible evidence, a sloppy job done by police. Is it just a trot of an excuse that is being given by this particular government agencies? And what can we do in light of that? Because it seems then we as the Kenyan population, then we have no recourse. If the evidence was sloppy, then do we just let the case go off because there was a poor prosecution that was done?
I think.
Yeah, let's see from Governor.
I think I'm glad you put that article by.
Yes, because I saw he raised how we can deal with the...
What page was it in the Sunday Nation?
That was on page 14, just a moment.
Yeah, because I remember reading it over. I think Maina...
Page 17.
Page 17.
Yes.
Maina has a very interesting proposal.
Yes.
Where is this that what we need to do is to shame these people.
Yes. Going the Roman way.
The Roman way.
Yes.
That society can decide to shame you, even if the courts don't shame you. You know, for example, a resolution in the Senate or in Parliament or just, you know, when it is known that you have stolen from the public and you got filth rich and unfairly and so on, then you are shamed. And Maina goes further to say that we should have a law to this effect, that you may not go to jail,
yes.
Your property may not be seized, but you are shamed in such a way that everywhere you turn, people will just turn their faces from you. Even if you go to church would not receive any tithe from you, something like that. You see?
Yes.
And I think I think Maina has made a very good proposal that should be. Here it is, on this paragraph.
Which part? I'm trying to look at it.
It is paragraph.
Still on 18 or
page 18.
Page 18.
Almost towards the last paragraph.
Yes.
And it talks about
the dishonor,
the
culture
curse. Yeah, here it is, yes. Yeah. It said, let me begin. No one, not even Mr. Odinga's ardent supporters, has spoken about strengthening Chapter 6 of the Constitution the flagrantly disobeyed provisions on integrity. It can be strengthened by enacting a Kenyan version of the old Roman law of damnatio memoriae, also known as the law of the condemnation of memory.
Yes.
Okay. The damnatio law created a form of communal dishonor. On a vote by the Senate, traitors and others who had dishonored Rome were not to be remembered. Their names were torn from monuments, and any statues erected in their honor were destroyed. The threat of suffering, this is what I like, the threat of suffering eternal oblivion encouraged good behavior. Many Romans feared the second death from this condemnation than they feared physical death.
And it's correct to say that a cultural dishonor and communal curse amendment to Chapter 6 could achieve what the EACC noisy showmanship has failed to.
Create a socially relevant sanction that politicians actually fear. When a corrupt leader leaves office, a vote of dishonor and communal curse could be passed against him or her. The person would then be stripped of any national honors and awards that they got while in office, and any schools and monuments named after him would be renamed. So Kabano
maybe that's how, instead of
a chance of having a school renamed after him. After all, just look for somebody to disown that.
But let me say something about this capital. But I keep saying it that the whole nation actually, because I know there's an international push away from capital punishment.
Yes.
But what worries me, if you let me use what I know best. If you pilfer drugs that are going to treat people, say vaccines, how many children do you kill? How many people die? If you do roads badly and people have accidents, how many people die? If you do buildings badly because of corruption and these buildings collapse, how many people die? Why are we so...
If you construct dams.
If you construct dams, let me leave that at that point. I mean, if you do all these things as people die, why are we so worried about the life of one person that is judicially executed while their actions have actually killed many, many more people? I say this because Honorable Kangata, who I think now is a senator from Murang, I believe, actually brought this, when we discussed this, he actually brought this to Parliament and wanted to amend the law so that we can actually have capital punishment. It was easily thrown out of Parliament. And the conversation outside was, we are retrogressive. We are retrogressive in our corruption. Our children are dying because of corruption. Our people are dying on the road because of corruption. I like this version where you have condemnation,
for life.
society condemnation, and everything about you erased. But that's okay. But I think...
But the only thing, Babji, sorry, the only thing about capital punishments, the thing why the world has moved away from capital punishment is that if you happen, in case you happen to capitally punish somebody who was innocent, the deed is done. And you take the US system where a lot of black people go to jail because of they are accused of having raped somebody. I was reading a case, whenever I pick up this, I read it very carefully, because a friend of mine suffered a jail sentence that way and was, after 14 years, found to be innocent. You see, capital punishment is too final. So the reason why the world is moving away from capital punishment is not so much because of what you are saying. What you are saying is correct. But in the event that an innocent person is put to death, you can't reverse it. So let us find other ways other than this, because this one may have other victims who should not have been victims. That's the problem. I think that's where abolishing capital punishment in most civilized society came about, because history showed, including Galileo. Including Galileo, you see.
When he said the world was round.
You see, and he was executed, you see. So let's shy away from capital punishment, go the direction that Maina is talking about. But Debarl, before you end, I want to point out something about in the papers, which we could discuss. But
I will. Let's say just from Kabano.
I think all what you are saying
Yes.
is about the systems need to be streamlined. You know, we have the laws. We need, like Mr. Wachira Maina, whom respect a lot, you know, has even been harvested to go and advise Kagame in Rwanda. And it happens often that you have very serious minds and very strong professionals being harvested by other nations. And we only discover them when it is either too late or we celebrate them when they are gone. Now, the systems are important to be changed. But let's ask two questions. We have the Public Officers Ethics Act.
Yeah.
Okay? It clearly states what state officers should and should not do. But we see this being disobeyed every time. We see civil servants, cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, state officers, even judicial officers, parading monies everywhere. We are not saying it's bad to give, and we are not misers, we are not mean. But when you go to a function, and you don't allow the people to participate, say for instance the spirit of Harambee is to give for everybody to line up and give something small, 5 shillings, 10 shillings, the spirit of pooling together. You just go pop with 5 choppers, then you give 5, 10 million, and you leave. The local people know that money comes from the choppers. Money is not mobilized among themselves. I've seen many events where the local people, even those who have organized themselves as groups, business people, professionals from those villages, are not given an opportunity or the chance to contribute. It's happening now because the intention is to just suffocate local people with the might of money. I have read in the papers today a cabinet secretary from some part of this country talking about what you need to become a president of Kenya. You need 200 billion. You know, really, that's how we are going. The Public Officer Ethics Act, compliance is simple. Then you have the chapter 6, the leadership and integrity. In order to finish the graft fiefdom in this country, you need political will. And I can give examples. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, you know, read the book, The Doctor in the House. The man who was involved in really putting Malaysia in the first world. You know, he took over the country again at 92 years. He was voted, and the Prime Minister now, who was there last week, who was voted out, I think on Friday morning, cannot leave the country. Because his house is even being raided. You have been a Prime Minister, you have presided over thefts, sleaze, you know, massive corruption. You are not allowed to leave your country. It's happening in Malaysia. You saw what happens to another Prime Minister, President of South Korea.
Yes.
A daughter of another head of state. You know, you are voted out because of corruption. You have seen what has happened in Brazil. Even South Africa itself.
Yes.
You see what is happening now with the Ramaphosa taking over and the Zuma, who was just the president the other day. So it's a question of asking. If you read The Doctor in the House, you can see what Malaysia did and what Dr. Mahathir Mohamad did in order to put Malaysia, which in 1963 was the same level with Kenya. You read the book called From the Third to the First World. On Lee Kuan Yew.
Yes.
And then you read the other book. What if there was no Lee Kuan Yew? Where would Singapore be? In Singapore, they pay their public officers very well. But if you are caught in an act of illegality, and worse of it, corruption, you are defamed. Even clubs, private member clubs, golf clubs, country clubs, hotels,
yes.
Sport clubs, where you belong to, you actually delisted. You become an outcast completely. So what we need in this country, of course, we are happy about the DPP. He is appealing many cases. He has appealed the case of the accident in Limuru. He has appealed the case of the NYS. And you can see the NYS may be playing a role that is very patriotic in order to circumvent these other agencies that are really seeming to be compromised in order to crush the graft fiefdom in this country. You need action from the top. Oh. And I have a lot of hope. I'm very inspired, very optimistic that Uhuru Kenyatta, His Excellency, Raila Odinga, Right Honorable, they have very little to lose in the wake of the handshake, they can leave a trail of victims, casualties, those merchants of graft, merchants of impunity, because among the 9-point agenda that were unveiled on 9th of March includes national ethos. That's about national values. It's about corruption. Just address those 2 points. Everything else, the big four,
will fall into place.
The national unity, national cohesion, national integration will come into shape. So fish, as Chinese would say, rot from the fish. And I don't mean I don't mean the fish from Lake Victoria. I mean the fish, the human fish. Figuratively, they rot from the fish. So
from the head.
And I'm sure, holding this paper this way, I can tell you, this will be the beginning of the end of the cartels. I know Uhuru will not allow it to go. I remember, if you allow me just to say this, I remember I convened an exclusive press conference for the Nation Media Group in my constituency in a village called Ishamara in 2015. And I was alone, surrounded by about 30 pastors and priests in a ceremony to pray for some orphans that I was taking to a school. And on that Sunday afternoon, having left a very important function in my local PCA church in a village called Kaini, I called on the president to crack the whip because of the National Youth Service. By the time I sat down, I'm in a village in Mukurweini. By the time I sat down, my phone was ringing from all corners of this country, from north to south, west and east. And in the next 24 hours, what I saw, I had not seen in my life. Real merchants of graft network in this country is very solid and very spread. You see? And I can tell you, Debarl, I know many things cause people to be isolated. But from that particular moment, I was never forgiven. And the following morning, on Monday morning, a certain group that is in this town, so-called PR, digital, radio broadcasters, were mobilized. And in all the vernacular stations, from Minoro to Kameme to Okena to Shoro, there was condemnation. And I know if I went to the village the following day, on Tuesday, I would have been received very badly, because I was being broadcast that I'm fighting the president because I'm touching the strong people around there. But my loyalty is to the country first. Our loyalty is to the head of state. If you are in the party of the head of state, or you should support your president, as Barack Obama would say. I was trying to support the president in order to get the burden off his shoulders so that he can walk steadily and stably to lead the country. And I can tell you, from there on, the orchestration was done. But I want to thank colleagues whom we worked with, including the current whip of the National Assembly majority, Washiali, because we disobeyed all those calls and all those mobilizations not to go. So, Honorable Pogisho is in the Senate now. And Honorable Nyikal, Dr. Nyikal, is in the House now. And Nyong'o is the head of the executive. The oversight are on my right and on my left. I think before even the president acts, it is important for you to go and mobilize your colleagues in order to put a spotlight on this matter.
Let's say from Pogisho.
Let me just say, basically, in trying to wind out this thing, because I'm also concerned about the issues that we are not talking about, even the victims of this big dam in Nakuru that just disappeared. But we are, and we are always talking over them, and there's so many people who have been killed by that, and many incidents like that. I guess it's part of corruption. My thinking on this matter is, I believe, like my friend here, that we're going to see the end of this if, by the handshake and by the determination that I see in the eyes and the minds of the principles of this handshake, that they are going to start to really deal a big blow to this corruption. Because it's very visible, it's very open, and the perpetrators are very proud of it. In other cultures, as we have seen, your family name is very important. And so if the Pogisha name, for example, is brought in bad light, it should hit me very hard, isn't it? And that's what we're talking about. That kind of shaming should be brought back. Shaming, not the way we do the list of shame and then it's and then it disappears. No. It should be a proper law that passes, that allows, instead of a capital punishment, we can actually bring something that comes very close to capital punishment, but you're alive.
So sure.
But it is really, you've really been, basically, you've really down. Because you can't walk anywhere, people will say, hey, is that the guy? You know, the kids will say, that's the fellow. And these are the kind of things that, so we turn our kids away from thinking it's famous. It's being famous, that you're moving around and you've stolen from the public. So, I agree, I mean, like all of us are saying, I believe that the head of state is trying very hard to find a way. And if we can help, let us help. Anybody who has an idea, we should be able to channel those ideas so that we can help this thing deal. That's why, you know, if anybody says we cannot bring in amendments to our laws or even think about a referendum, these are very weighty issues. We must begin to think beyond just me. We'll think about this country. Let's think about it. And so, over the weekend when we move around, I'd like to see people talk against corruption, you know, people talk about it. If you want to build a nation, let's see what you're building it from, isn't it? let's not jump to what I will be. Let's think about what are you using to build a nation? What are you going to govern tomorrow? What is the infrastructure? What is the foundation of that nation which is coming? If it is still founded on the same things and people we see today, we don't have a bright future. And Kenya is a very strong economy in this region. And I tell you, the rest are watching us. The rest are watching us. And we might spread the bad manners to everybody because everybody watches us. And I think it's very important then that we take the next step to lead Africa, because Kenya does lead.
Right.
And can I just beg your indulgence?
Yes, please.
I was trying to draw your attention to the story in the Standard on
yes,
page 6.
That is what actually I wanted us to wind up with. Because I was a bit worried, and I'll be remiss. You are a professor. You've been in these campuses as well. You can tell us more about this particular headline in the Daily Nation. Where is it?
And the Standard.
The Standard, yes.
Yeah.
Let me try and capture it.
Page 6.
Where is it going? Where are my papers? Okay, let me try and lift it again.
And you know, not just about Kisumu, it concerns all countries, because we have been discussing it. These issues.
Why firms find diploma holders more attractive?
No.
Is that the one?
Page 6.
Page 6? Okay.
Page 6 of the Standard.
But still, this is a very pivotal...
yeah, that's also very important. But this was equally important, especially because it's a very current issue in the Council of Governors, in fact. Yeah, state told... no, it's page 6. To
add funds for colleges?
No, it's page 6 of today's Standard.
The side was told?
Yeah, state told to add, yes.
Yeah. For colleges.
No, sorry, I got it wrong. Not that one. I think maybe... It is Standard today? No, sorry, page 18.
Page 18?
No, page 12. Page 12.
Page 12.
Page 12. Page 12.
Okay.
Page 12.
Yeah, it's almost the same.
State row with county over hotel.
Now,
that's a row between us, not really a row. Between us as Kisumu County and Tourism Finance Corporation, which is a part of the Corporation Ministry of Tourism. Now, I want to broaden this issue. If you read the Constitution, and I want to quote, all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. This is Article 1. Which can and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. Sovereign power under the Constitution, is delegated to the following state organs, which shall perform the function in accordance with this Constitution: Parliament, the legislative assemblies in the county government, the national executive, and the executive structure of the county governments. Let me stop there.
Okay.
That's where sovereignty lies. Now, if you go to Schedule 4 of the Constitution, you'll find that Schedule 4 of the Constitution divides functions between these two levels of government, national and county. And in the area of tourism, Schedule 4 of the Constitution gives at Part 1, Article 35 of Part 1 says tourism policy gives the issue of tourism policy and development to the national government. When it goes to Part 2, when it comes to counties, 2.7d says one of the functions of the counties, local tourism. Now, the issue I have at hand is Sunset Hotel, which is a tourist hotel. Now, when devolution came into being, something called the Transition Authority was established to divide assets and liabilities between counties and the national government, among the counties, assets and liabilities. The Transition Authority failed to complete that job. Another institution was then established under Professor Karega Mutahi called the Technical Intergovernmental Technical Committee, yes, which was supposed to complete the work of Transition Authority. That committee has 2 months to go. It has not done this work. It means that a lot of assets and liabilities which are still not been sorted out. Now, you do understand in Kisumu, for example, the national government took Prosperity House, the 19-story building, which is in Kisumu soil. Our people also paid taxes to build it. They took it lock, stock, and barrel. But a Sunset Hotel, which is 5% owned by us and 95% owned by them, the land is ours and everything else, they can't have a say. Because the Transition Authority, or Karega Mutahi's authority, should have sat down and say, at least this one, since local tourism is in your hands, and we also want you to generate own revenue, this should belong to you. I think it's very logical. But this so-called Tourism Finance Corporation, which is just a corporation to finance tourism, what they should do is now be in the business of financing us to organize and promote local tourism. So for me, the issue is very clear. There is no conflict.
Thank you. Just look a comment about that, and I support Professor, but let me please just make
that will be also your closing remarks, because we are supposed to be out of the studio right now. 30 seconds.
Okay. The issue of devolution, in fact, the Transition Authority never did its work. Its predecessor never done its work. So a lot of issues are pending, and that's where Professor is coming from. And if you look at even in the health sector, a lot of problems we are having is because the transition wasn't done properly. So that intergovernmental technical secretariat needs to actually sit down and do what was not done by the Transition Authority. So otherwise, we will blame a lot of things on devolution, while the problem is we haven't done it properly
during the transition. And of course, also the Transitional Authority failed to actually give a good handover. A lot of loopholes were left. Still, you have the pending bills as well. Let's hear from Kabano.
My closing remarks.
Closing remarks.
We need a national conversation about the matters we have discussed today.
Yes.
As we expect action from the top. I also wanted to draw your attention to the story here, in the Standard of yesterday, page 19. This is about the proposal from myself about the Nairobi We Want Convention. In 1993, July 1993, July 17th to July 19th. I had just finished university. I remember I was very inspired listening to the speech by then chairman of DP, member of parliament for there then, Mwai Kibaki, and the graduate of California, Berkeley, then member of parliament Kisumu Rulo for the Kenya, Professor Nyong'o, talking at KICC during the forum dubbed the Nairobi We Want Convention, which was hosted by then mayor of Nairobi, Steve Mwangi, in quote, Aka, also known as the Magic. I think the kind of the accusations we fight in Nairobi now and the debate should stop being personalization attacks and attacks on the individuals who hold the office and also the critics who are questioning.
Thank you.
And convene the Nairobi We Want Convention so that the stakeholders, like we did in 2005, when I was the chairman of Nairobi Water Company, the stakeholders on the resident associations, on the consumers, on professionals, we can input.
Thank you.
Because Nairobi is our home.
Thank you. Forget you.
Yes, and I think also that may go to all counties, the county we want.
Yeah.
Because I think that people must give their input everywhere. Yeah. But there are certain things. I saw a lead story earlier about Kapedo.
Yes.
The insecurity in Kapedo and in Laikipia is a matter that requires to be investigated thoroughly and dealt with once and for all. And I think that this can be done without prejudice by maybe an independent body of people who don't look at it tribally or anything wise and see what is it that's ailing that particular region. I think we've lost too many people. And what is it that's happening to these young Pokot people who I'm told disappear in Laikipia? Where are they going? Those kind of things need, I think, in my estimation, why don't you find a solution that lasts instead of beginning to leave it to chance? What's happening in that part of the world? We need to look at. Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, briefly, Nyong'o, as we're winding up.
Well, I think I'm just happy that my friend Otiende Amolo is okay. As he reported at press over the weekend that he was ill, but he says he had malaria and he's recovered well. Congratulations to him. And secondly, to the victims of this flood thing in the Rift Valley.
Yes.
Koigu Amwere has said a very important thing, that while he was Member of Parliament for Nakuru North, he actually opposed the building of this dam, and a very good reasons. And he was dismissed as a rebel. I think let us always listen to these voices in the wilderness. I think most people in Palestine then, if they had listened to John the Baptist, that a savior was coming, a number of them would have followed Jesus. But they didn't, much to their peril. So I think that these voices in the wilderness, which was this book like Kabando Kabando and so on, and Koigo Amwere, let us listen to them, because they speak for the people most of the time.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much.